I think 210 or something like that. Is that right? Comcast 210.
That's it.
Comcast 210. Got to give props to Comcast because they always give props to me. Brian Graves, how you doing?
Pretty good. I haven't done local origination television in about 36 years. This is
Local origination television.
Sure.
That is the technical term for pay to play.
Sort of.
Kind of.
Sort of. Yes. Yes.
Brian, we're going to get to our interview with you here in a little bit, and just a chance to talk a little bit about the media.
Sure.
Rob Alderman, the shrink Rob Alderman, he has the night off.
Yeah. Oh.
So when Rob has the night off, I venture he's out fly fishing. He's doing something. It's not anything productive, otherwise he would be in here. But Rob technically has the night off right now, and I would say it is a pleasure to have you filling in today. Before we begin, a quick rundown of what happened yesterday. We kind of had to wrap up our show quickly yesterday, but we had a segment called 5 Questions. Mm-hmm. And for this 5 questions, Brian, we called Adam Lewis, the chairman of the local GOP, and we asked him the same 5 questions that we asked Delegate Blake Kitterman from the Democratic Party.
Yeah, you got to replay this.
Well, I've thought about it. Let's pull that up. I'm going to replay just portions of that. Okay, I've got this. I'm going to pull this up here real quick. But in summary, both of them had some very interesting comments related to their candidates. And I'll say this. Here's my initial impression as I pull this up for us to listen to. Adam Lewis was much more, in my opinion, direct with his criticisms of his candidate than young Blake Kitterman was.
Yeah.
Blake's obviously a very smart kid. He's I call him a kid. He's an adult. He's down at UTC. He's studying to do something great in politics. I've never met him personally, but I've read kind of some stuff that he's written, and he's obviously a studied guy. One of the biggest revelations I think that I saw in that interview was he really wasn't ready to acknowledge Hillary Clinton's deficits. He wasn't going to say that. He was as Rob called him, he's a good company man.
Yes, well, okay.
He was a real good company man. But I think with Blake, another thing that stood out to me was he's very characteristic of other liberals that I know who are supporting Hillary Clinton. And we talk about how people have been somewhat dismissive of Donald Trump's behaviors.
Yeah.
But I think we're seeing that a lot of the GOP are not dismissing his behavior.
I think that would be pretty obvious, yeah.
But I don't see a lot of liberals stepping up to, call Hillary on the carpet for some of what her criticism has been. I think that they're much more dismissive of her past behavior, whether it's email or Benghazi or otherwise.
I heard. I forget which program it was last night. Somebody mentioned that, and I'm paraphrasing here. Democrats are better team players than Republicans are. That was an observation I heard.
And we thought Bernie Sanders kind of shook that up. And, of course, big news today from WikiLeaks. No one's surprised, though, that the Hillary Clinton campaign was really, really underhanded at sinking Bernie. But it's politics, right?
Sure.
Okay, who's surprised? Who's surprised about it? Brian, they're telling me you need to be a little bit louder, so I'm going to turn you up.
Okay.
So here we are. I'm going to play a little clip of this interview yesterday. Hopefully this comes in at the right spot.
One part of the strength of our
that's not the
organization.
right spot at all. Let's go here.
That we talk about with the older demographic.
All right, here's some from Adam Lewis, the chairman of the
GOP.
GOP.
I think any generation is important to a movement, whether it be the Republican Party or the Democratic Party. And as we go through this election cycle, you hear a lot about millennials and women and these people groups. I think that like the baby boomers, the large group that we talk about with the older demographic, the millennials are the next major group. There are also folks that are just now getting to the place where they can vote and are just now able to affect the process. Back to a simple answer, the children are our future, right? And I think that the millennials, as they come into their own, represent that right now for us.
Okay, so there was his comment on millennials. I want to back that up just a tad. I'm looking for his comment about the very first
I like
question.
that. I like that.
When you
Douglas
shave
is on
So here we go.
a simple answer.
Well, simple answer: you can't. If you're going to say bad things, people aren't going to be happy with you.
All right, so that's what Douglas said. My question was, why do the majority of Americans dislike your candidate? And his response was, you cannot say stupid stuff and people continue to like you, and which is a pretty simple answer, but pretty direct, right? To the contrary, Blake Kitterman's answer was, well, Donald says stupid stuff. It was the typical diversion talking points. She's not as bad as Donald. That wasn't the question. We drilled down into it, and he kind of sold it on Hillary as a career politician. So, Brian, I'm going to ask you that same question. Why do you think the majority of Americans dislike both Donald and Hillary Clinton? Give us the separate answers.
That's a good question because the majority of Americans picked both of them.
Well, I suppose that's the case. Well, not necessarily. If you look at the numbers, the majority of Democrats picked Hillary Clinton. The majority of Republicans picked Donald Trump. But the majority of Americans include a lot of folks who don't vote in the primaries and include the abstaining votes from each of those individual primaries and include the dissenting votes from each additional of those primaries. So the majority of Americans did not vote for Hillary or for Donald.
Well, the interesting thing is, when you talk about millennials do not have the familiarity with the Clinton history.
Okay. So in large, though, Bernie carried millennials in the Democratic primary.
Right. Well, that's youth. I think it's just youth.
Okay. So why do the majority of Americans not like Hillary Clinton?
Exactly why Donald Trump is having any success at all is because Americans are tired of, quote, career politicians.
Okay. So you agree with Blake Kitterman's answer that her label as a career politician.
Yes, to some respect I do. I would have to agree with that.
So why do the majority of Americans not like Donald Trump?
Crassness.
Okay.
The crassness
fair.
of it. I mean, look, we've had great candidates, both parties, in the past 50 years that have said tough things, but are able to say them in a way that they don't insult a third of the population or whatever. And this videotape the other day, that is a bit discouraging to hear that. I mean, who wants to hear the potential leader of the free world speak like that? I mean, yeah, that turns you off a little bit. Sure,
Yeah,
it
well,
should. I mean, it should turn you off.
I found myself looking for a breath mint today and refused to buy Tic Tacs, and it was something subliminal.
Tic Tacs put out a tweet saying that their company did not treat women this way. I mean, this is how crazy this thing has gotten.
Yeah, I think back to when all of a sudden Mentos were exploding all over the place, and all of a sudden Mentos is like, we do not condone using our product for bombs.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm sure Tic Tacs feel the same way, but let's get a little clip from Blake Kitterman here.
Blake.
Because I asked he and Adam too, both of them are millennials. And we've talked a lot about millennials in this race. Both of them are millennials, and I asked them what motivated them to be of their particular party. And here's Blake's response.
I went for Hillary Clinton, also known as the next president of the United States.
Look at
Wow!
there. He's still getting the talking points.
Okay.
It's still getting the talking points.
You're an excellent company man, Blake. Let's move on with 5 questions.
All right, 5 questions. All right, Blake, you were at the DNC. Now, I've talked a little bit on this show about being at the RNC, and I know. Fast forward.
Yeah, I did not see any flag burning, and I was
Fast
all
forward.
day. I didn't see anybody burning flags.
All right, question
don't
number
burn
1, Blake. Why do most Americans dislike your candidate?
I think that's a tricky question. I don't think that's a valid statement to say that most Americans dislike the candidate. I think people are just in
Hold on,
general.
no.
Blake, we're pragmatic here.
Every major poll, every
shows that the
sample.
majority of Americans dislike your candidate.
Well, I guess the same can be also said about Trump.
We asked
I
that
think
same
neither
question, but
candidate-
don't deflect.
Yeah, don't deflect. We
wouldn't let the
This is a
Republicans
tough
have
show to
it.
be on, Brian.
Neither candidate is necessarily really favorable in people's minds.
But why do
because-
they dislike your candidate? Now, the GOP answer, I asked them the same question about Trump. They answered it. Why do people dislike your candidate, Hillary Clinton?
I think the points that she's brought up is that, and I think there's a multitude of reasons of why someone can dislike someone, and I can't speak to the broad-based answer, but I think there's some issues that people have with her relatability. I mean, she's been someone who has been in the public eye for 20, 30 years. And so you kind of develop that political-based reputation, and people don't feel connected with their political leaders, and it kind of stimulates that dislike. I mean, we saw America's disinvestment and distrust of politicians directly after the Watergate scandal, and it's only gotten worse since. So the name politician fixated onto a candidate inevitably leads to their reputational downfall. And
So
I
you
guess
think it's an issue of perception,
more or
not
less, I would say.
substance? Is
I
there
mean,
a
if we're talking
substantive
about
reason that?
partisan, if we're talking about ideological reasons, then of course I can understand why people more conservative don't necessarily like her, because it's partisan based. Just like I don't necessarily like the views of Paul Ryan. So I guess it's multifaceted, is what I'm trying to say. But I think from what I hear from people and what I heard from the Bernie Sanders delegates is the establishment. It's the attribution to the party for so long and the government.
Okay, so Blake says openly it's perception, not substance, and you kind of agreed with that. You said the perception of being political, particularly with millennials, is a
That's
problem.
right, because I think a lot of millennials are not aware of the history, the actual facts behind her career.
Okay, well, and that's cohesive with the WikiLeaks data, which now tells us that
If
a
you-
strategy of the Clinton campaign was to keep voters uninformed about such
Well,
things.
I'm still wary about the WikiLeaks stuff.
Well, that's true, but it's in the headlines right now. We're teasing that out too
Okay.
here on the show. We're teasing that out. But Blake's next question, and this is interesting because when I asked each of them why they were respectively Republican or Democrat, Adam Lewis's answer was, well, to me, it's not a one issue, but if there was one issue, it'd be the issue of life, the right to exist.
Right.
So that's really what motivates him. He says he obviously subscribes to a list of other conservative ideals, but the idea that someone has a right to exist is important to him. Blake's answer was a bit different. All right, question number 2, Blake. What issues motivate you to be a Democrat?
Well, I guess one of the biggest issues, and this is an issue that we see even locally in Bradley County, is LGBTQ plus rights. I mean, I'm a member of the LGBTQ plus community, and we live in a state that doesn't really support that. And so whenever I first started the Young Democrats, it was based on the idea that you can come to this place and it be a safe haven for you, no matter who you are, your creed, your orientation, your identification, etc. So that was really an motivation for me, and something that has really motivated my studies here at UTC as well.
So for Blake, the idea of LGBTQ inclusion, lesbian, bisexual, transsexual, queer, that moniker keeps getting longer.
Yes.
I don't know what they'll add to it next, but somebody will self-identify and it'll be added there. And the idea is a protected class of individuals. Here's an observation, and tell me that as average Joe American guy. Now, I've been open on this show that I am a conservative, I'm a member of the Republican Party, but I'm trying to be fair here. Is it fair for me, trying to set my conservative side aside, to say one person at the center of why they do what they do, of what motivates them, is the right for everyone to exist, and for the other one, it's the right for 5% of the population to have something? Is that a fair delineation of those two?
I'm going to generalize that a little more. I think the most dangerous thing a voter can do is vote for a person on one policy issue, because there is no perfect candidate. There are candidates that I have a great deal of respect for, because in the majority, I think they're doing the right thing. But there may be that one I disagree with, that one policy. So I have to balance that out. Do I want these people to serve knowing that one issue that I care about, maybe something we disagree on, but I feel okay that the rest of their views and political observations and policies are good for the country, the county, the state, whatever. I think one issue voting is, I don't know, it's very dangerous, very, very scary.
Well, and
But
I
it's-
can say that I believe that that's fair.
But it's always one issue that brings voters to the polls,
Okay.
more often than not.
So explain that a little bit further. One issue that brings them to the polls. So you're saying most voters show up because of one particular
Of
thing.
one issue.
So would you say that a lot of voters are showing up for Trump because of the wall? He's going to build the wall.
I think it's economics in general. with
Okay.
him.
So the economics issue. So what's the one issue for Hillary
For Hillary,
that people are showing up for?
boy, this is going to sound like a very biased answer, and I don't want it to be.
Answer it. It's Man Up America. We
Well, that's really hard for me to say because, look, okay, it's public record. I'm a registered Republican. I have never voted for a Democrat for president, and well, not this year either. But not sure. Not sure I'll vote for a Republican either.
So what issue motivates Hillary voters to vote for Hillary? If it's a one issue campaign.
I think Blake may be onto something. That issue of sexual gender identity, equal rights, for lack of a better phrase, I think has become so prominent, and they do project, fairly or unfairly, they project that Democrats will more quickly protect their ability to be equal citizens under the law than Republicans will.
And we know that millennials are much more in favor of equal marital rights.
Sure, because just recent past shows us that the Supreme Court rulings, and there's a lot more support in the Republican Party for gay marriage than there used to be. I'm not going to say I'm for or against it. I'm a Christian. I believe in Scripture, and I sort of leave it at that. But
Well, and that leads us to the next question I have. For so long, morality, Scripture has motivated the evangelical vote. But Trump has obviously not made a play on being an evangelical candidate. Where do those people, who do they show up for? Have they been able to shift that one issue? Are they doing what you recommended? Are they overlooking the one issue of morality and showing up to the polls for a candidate?
here's the thing about that is, there is such a divide in views between the two parties, and look, let's face it, most stalwart conservative Republicans are evangelical Christians or of the religious faith and moralities. I'm not saying they're not any Democrats that way. I don't mean that, but that's where the Republican conservative base is. I actually heard the pastor, and I think his name is Robert Jeffries, pastor at First Baptist in Dallas. I heard him last night. And his take on it was, that's Bill O'Reilly. I'll just tell you. Bill O'Reilly asked him, so what do you tell a member of your congregation comes up to you and says, Pastor, look, I know you're supporting Donald Trump, but I got a wife and kids, and you heard what he said. How can I even think about voting for that? And I hope I don't misinterpret what he said or misphrase it, but basically he said that he would tell them, okay, here is what we know Donald Trump stands for, or at least says he wants to do for the country: stronger defense, better economic opportunity, a better a relaxation of real or perceived encroachments on religious liberty. You know, he says he wants to do and stands for all the things that we stand for. Because he made a statement that offends you, that was 11 years ago, does that mean that you would sacrifice to make a President Clinton who basically opposes all these issues that we are for? Would you risk that? And not least of those being a Supreme Court justice pick. And that is one of the most prominent ministers in this country saying those things. In fact, he's on Trump's evangelical advisory team or something, I think.
So would you say that this election has taken that traditional trend of one-issue voters and pushed them to be more comprehensive in what they're showing up to the polls
I think that may be right. But there again, Adam, anybody who's followed politics, anyone, I don't care what side you're on, how old you are, we have never, this is This is an undefinable campaign. There's nothing you can compare it to. It just isn't.
So
we
how-
have never seen anything like
So
this.
how do you, as a member of the press, a journalist, how do you frame that when you go to write about it? Do you think that a lot of the bias perceived in the media is really just journalists struggling to accurately report and to frame it within a realm of understanding?
That may be true. Now, it's interesting. As far as media bias, I found it fascinating that there were so many people griping about Lester Holt in the first debate. And Politico reported Lester Holt is a registered Republican. That may surprise a lot of people. You've got Chris Wallace coming up, Fox News anchor, Fox News.
I don't think Lester Holt's going to be a registered Republican anymore.
Well, and now you've got, people would automatically think, and I'm sure a lot of Democrats would think that this is not going to be fair for Secretary Clinton, because you've got Chris Wallace, the major Fox News anchor. He's a registered Democrat.
Well,
And
here's
most people don't. So bias is in the eye of the beholder. Now, the format, the framing, did you cut them off too soon? Did you not follow up where you should have? You know what? It's like me. Look, I scream at Tennessee football all the time. Probably know. I know very little about football, but I can watch a play. I know what's going on, and baseball, football, basketball, whatever. And I find myself jumping, going, "You idiot! You should have caught that." Really? How do I know that? I'm not in the arena. I'm not the one reaching for the ball. I really am reluctant to criticize moderators. That is a tough job, and anybody who's done it comes out of that thing saying there's no win. There's no win when you do that. You lose.
Now, we're going to go to a quick commercial break. When we come back, since I have got...
And I'll tell you the format. I'd like to see a debate.
Well, let's talk about that when we come back.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, and then we're going to actually move away from the presidential campaign and get a chance to talk to Brian Graves. We're going to have him man up on what it's like to be a member of the press, to moderate. He's moderated several of our local debates and forums before, the challenges and what he does to prepare for those things. And then we're going to get his take on some things unrelated to politics that are currently in our local media. So we're glad to have Brian Graves from the Cleveland Daily Banner with us today. We're once again Talk 101.3 The Buzz, WTNB live today. We're going to a commercial break, and then we will be right back.
Woodman Life has been keeping its promises to members for more than 100 years. That means we've survived the Great Depression, Black Friday, and all the other ups and downs our economy has faced. In good times and bad, we're strong and stable. We're an organization your family can count on. At Woodman Life, we've always believed that slow and steady really does win the race. Our conservative investment philosophies are just one part of the strength of our organization. What really makes Woodman Life strong is the trust and loyalty of our members.
Contact your local Woodman representative today by calling 423-790-2847. With 3 offices serving Southeast Tennessee, your Woodman representative standing by to help you.
Woodman of the World Life Insurance Society of Omaha, Nebraska. Woodman Life, standing strong for generations.
Are you looking to refinance your home, or perhaps you're in the market to actually purchase? Take it from the good Dr. J. Adam. There's no need to go far and wide to look for mortgage help. Call 339-8086, Home Mortgage Solutions, LLC, right here in Cleveland. Their team's prepared to help you with lending, with refi options. Just give them a call, 339-8086, and tell them the good Dr. J. Adam sent you. The good Dr. J. Adam here, talking to all the gentlemen out there. For those of you with wives, girlfriends, even mothers, which would make all of you, you need to call 423-472-8887 and talk to the good folks at Bliss Day Spa. Nothing says I love you like the special treatment, the VIP treatment of the services of Bliss Day Spa. Call them today, 423-472-8887. Tell them the good doctor sent you from Man Up America.
So, how's the new job?
Love it. But it's not just a job, it's a career.
Life insurance? Love?
I told you Woodman Life is really active in the community, right? They support all kinds of community improvement projects. How's your job, by the way?
Don't ask.
Begin your financial career today with Woodman Life by calling 423-790-2847. All right, we're back here on Man Up America, Talk 101.3 The Buzz, WTNB. That's digital TV station channel 27.1, Charter Channel 5, Comcast Channel 210. So
210.
there are a lot of ways to watch us, including WTNB's YouTube page, where all this is kind of hosted afterwards. So if you miss the show, don't worry. You can always go to YouTube. Go to our Facebook page, Man Up Talk at Facebook. And don't forget that you can send us comments, manuptalk@gmail.com. Thank you to Google for those wonderful free email addresses to keep costs of this show down. We've got Brian Graves, illustrious reporter from the Cleveland Daily Banner. When I was on the county commission, Brian, I suffered at the end of your pen once or twice. Nothing too awful bad. I tried to watch what I said and what I did, but occasionally Brian was forced to report something that I had said. And it doesn't shy away from that at all. Yeah. And currently in local politics, you still are kind of the governmental correspondent for local government. Is that correct?
For county government, anyway.
For county government. So there's a different reporter for city government.
Sure, yeah. One reporter could not do it all.
Did you guys draw straws to see who got
no,
rock, paper, scissors?
Yeah, I lost. No, it's just the way it worked out. Just the way it worked out.
Okay.
Because Joanna Lowe had already been covering city government when I came in, and that was open, and that's where I went.
Awesome. Well, I've got some questions about the media, and like I said, we're going to move on from the presidential campaign, but to the media in general, and a couple of the headlines that have been really concerning. We just saw what happened with Hurricane Matthew.
Sure.
Now, I will say that on social media, most of the posts related to Hurricane Matthew were related to, this really screwed up my vacation. Whereas there other headlines are, there was a lot of loss of life, property destruction. It wasn't the worst storm to hit Florida in recent memory.
They probably dodged a bullet, actually.
Yeah, but it still was quite an impact. Yeah. You've been in the game of journalism for how long? How many years?
February will be 36 years.
36 years. What's it like to have to cover a story like a natural disaster that really doesn't have a good spin to it? There's nothing really great to say.
There's a lot of stories that do not have a good spin. I've not covered a, quote, natural disaster. Yeah, maybe a local little flooding or something, but nothing on a hurricane level. But you do cover human tragedy. Lord, I've sat in the courtroom. I've watched murder trials, and some trials I won't even describe on a radio station. I mean, but human tragedy is the worst. When you go in and you cover really human wreckage caused not by weather but by either drugs or domestic assault. That may have been one of the hardest stories I ever did. One of the first stories I ever did was I did a series on domestic assault, and you interview these young women who have to flee literally for their lives, and you hear their stories. That's difficult. In that case, you hope the readers see that and become active in supporting local organizations that help people in that situation. But to hear those kind of stories, and I tear if a leaf falls off a tree. I cry at Star Trek, it doesn't matter. For me, it gets tough. I had never told me one time that's why she liked me to do them, because I get so emotional. I do get emotional about things. There are times I wanted to jump up and strangle a county commissioner, but now that you're gone, I don't do that anymore.
Oh, well, thanks,
No,
Brian.
but seriously,
That's
no.
because I strangled them for you.
Yes, thank you very much. No, but seriously, those are the hard ones. It's when you see the human tragedy that's tough. That's the toughest.
So, when you cover human tragedy, you mentioned it's tough. What do you seek to communicate? In other words, there are some things as a father, and even me personally, I look and go, it's not that I want to be dismissive or ignorant of anything, but did I really need to know that? We were watching a lot of what was taking place with Hurricane Matthew, and I think that it seems like everybody's trying to balance just how much carnage we display. Now, there's the old adage, if it bleeds, it leads.
It leads, yeah.
As an individual, how do you temper that?
With facts. Look, it's easy to sensationalize almost anything. Boy, now you're going to get me on the soapbox.
Okay.
Sensational.
That's why you're in on Men Up America.
Sensationalized journalism is just such a detriment to public information and society in general. I've not been silent about that. We have media outlets here who do enjoy coming up and taking an issue and then writing a headline, which sells very well, but is not really the truth. I use sensationalize anything. But for me, it's just the facts. They said this in context. Here is where it happened. Here is what was done. Here's what was said. It's just what happened. Actually, journalism, in some respects, is the easiest job in the world.
So you're the Joe Friday journalist. You're the
Just
the
the
facts,
facts.
ma'am.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for the sensational journalist, you mentioned that we have some journalists from out of town that come in and take our local situations and they blow them up for headlines.
Yes.
Doesn't that come back to bite you? Is there
I
some
hope so.
truth to be sure your sins will find you out? If you're proven to constantly be sensationalizing information, does it find you out, or are we in a time where we salivate for the sensational to the tune that it doesn't matter if Glenn Beck's correct, it doesn't matter if Bill O'Reilly's correct, it doesn't matter if Mark Levin's correct, it just matters that they're speaking to our inner emotion?
Well, I fear one of the things you say is right, and the onset of reality television. Everybody wants that sensational, crazy, unbelievable story. I hate reality television. I'm for free speech, but it ought to be banned. I just think it's a detriment to society.
Or relabeled improv television,
Yes.
because it's not very real to
Yeah.
begin with, but
No, of course not.
it's more so unscripted television.
But no, look, there is a place, and I get mad sometimes. People criticize, conservatives will criticize MSNBC. Okay. Just like liberals will criticize Fox. NBC and Fox both have some incredibly outstanding journalists that report the news. They really do. Both of them do. Now, you tune on after 7 o'clock, there really is no news. There are people opining about the news. And both networks are judged on that. As far as news gathering organizations, they have some very, very, very good people on both networks.
But the highest rated programs on the news stations are the commentary.
Are the opinion, right?
Yeah, they're the opinion commentary.
Yes, they are.
I haven't said it on this show, but I'm a fan of Neil Cavuto.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a finance guy. I'm a financial planner and investment advisor by trade. I've always worked in that industry, and I find Neil's take on what's happening in markets and the economy very accurate.
Yeah.
He doesn't stay on those subjects. Kind of like Men Up America, we're kind of central to life, but politics invades our space all the time.
Sure it does.
It's all the time invading our space, which is why it's had so much attention on this program. And it works that way with Neil Cavuto. But even in that, when he does provide commentary, he provides it with a very clear, here's my 2 cents. Take it for what it's worth. Where do some people try to pass it as news?
Yeah. See, I was very critical. There was a newspaper in my neck of the woods. Their editor would print a personal column on the front page. Had nothing to do with the news, but put it on the front page. And this was happening at a time when we had a major news story in our area. Any opinion does not belong on the front page, unless it's an extraordinary event. I worked at a newspaper where we uncovered some things the school board had done, and a lot of things happened, but the superintendent needed to go. I don't think there's any question about it. And they printed an editorial on the front page saying that he should be fired or he should quit. That's an extraordinary circumstances. Outside of that, if you pull up the front page, there should be nothing but here's what happened today. This is it. Just the facts. That's really all we're supposed to do. Now, do we have opinions? We are human beings. We do have opinions, and I can just make this easy for everybody. Every reporter is biased.
Well, I think we're all biased to some degree.
Bingo. So,
try
okay,
not to be biased.
argument over. Yes, there's
Okay.
no argument. But
So-
every reporter is biased, not just some.
So
The trick is to keep that out of your report.
the next big question I have for you is kind of related to a lot of what you just mentioned, where we're issuing opinion constantly. How has social media affected
Oh.
old school run of the mill journalism?
Well, I don't know that it's effective old school run-of-the-mill journalism. It does sometimes give you a story idea. It sometimes makes you think of something you've not thought of before, and it's fascinating. Boy, I about got my nose bit off over the last debate because the debate started, and but that's also fascinating. It's very informative because it's real-time reaction. There's very few places you can get that. So whether I'm active or not, I don't tweet, and I'm never going to tweet. That's not going to happen. Too old to tweet. Facebook, I can figure out. It's complete sentences, depending on who's writing them, Adam. But anyway,
Now there's emocons, and I don't understand half of those, but maybe we'll have an expert in emocons on here. Emojis, that's what they're called.
yeah.
I guess.
But I think it has changed the game some. But it affecting how you report, no. It just I'm old school. I just okay.
Well,
but it helps give me some background and to understand a little better what I'm hearing.
Now, I have a theory, and it's related to social media. And for those who know me, know that I'm not a critic of social media. I still find it a very valuable and useful tool.
It's a lot of fun.
I maintain relationships that I otherwise would not have
You and I both.
if social media didn't exist. However, I do believe that for the most uninformed of the population, social media has become news. It has supplanted reliable, credible sources of information. I would say about every third post I see on social media is absolutely fake, and that has
From questionable sources.
from questionable sources. And I love the satirical ones. I love the Babylon Bee. I
sure.
love the Onion.
Sure.
But even some people, I see forward those articles, and I have to say, guys, this is the Onion. It's a satirical publication. But there are just blatantly false online resources that people perpetuate, and especially in this political cycle, so many of them. We see, obviously, I'm trying to think of the resource online now that's reveals whether things are true or not. Dispels
PolitiFact.
Well, PolitiFact's on the political side, but there's another website too. I'm drawing a blank on it, but it'll constantly say, "No, such and such isn't dead. This isn't true. This is." But it'll circulate. You know, how many times has Betty White died on Facebook?
Oh, Lord have mercy. Well, I mean, it's the old saying: don't believe everything you read. And if that's ever been true, that's social media. Don't believe everything you read on social media. Look it up at a responsible news source and find out before you go retelling it. Of course, there's the old adage: a story gets better the longer it goes. I mean, I could say here, and this is no disparage to you, but I could tell you the WTMB table is black. Well, 60 people later, it's a square and it's hanging on the wall and it's been painted orange and white for next week. I mean, stories get exaggerated the further they go, and that's part of what happens in social media. But never take anything for granted. I mean, you see a story like that, you may love it because that's what you want to hear, but sometimes you need to hear what you don't want to hear, and that made. So go check it out. Don't be so rushed to believe everything's true. And believe me, I've got close family members that I try to get from doing that.
Is the what we want to hear nothing new? In other words,
Yeah, sure.
when
No,
I
it's
pick
not
up
nothing. No, it's nothing.
when I pick up a newspaper, paper in my hand, there are things I flip to first. There are things I want to hear. You know, I'm going to the sports page. I'm going to local news. I'm going to the business section. I'm not even one to read the front page before I go to those sections. I might make my way back to the other stuff. I really don't use our local paper for national news.
Yeah.
Although y'all do a good job of kind of covering
We
it.
give some of it out there.
Yeah. So my question is, do we seek out the things that we want validated, regardless of whether they're truth or not? And how do you as a journalist approach a topic knowing that that's the case? Now, I'm going to frame this in a recent local thing that took place.
Sure.
It is no secret to anyone who paid attention in our county that in the last school board race, there were anonymous sources on social media
Yes.
that had a huge impact in what voters considered when it came time to vote.
That is probably true.
That social media presence likely filled a vacuum of folks who weren't reading the paper, weren't consuming other sources, more balanced sources, or filled the vacuum in general that maybe the papers weren't covering, because for the most part, that school board race, or there were several races for our local county school board, was not heavily covered in the media. There were WTNB hosted some forums. There were some incidental things there, but there was a persistent dialogue on social media that was extremely one-sided. How do you as a journalist approach being balanced in your reporting, knowing that there's constantly going to be an unchecked attack on social media?
You just do your job. I can't worry about social media.
So it doesn't weigh on your mind at all?
No.
Now, would you say
And
that
it
that's the
shouldn't.
case of other reporters?
No, I won't say that's the case
Okay.
of reporters. No, that should not. Like I say, my job is to cover the story. Period. Here's what they said. Here's what they did. Social media cannot influence me on that. Now, looking back on it, did I watch? Did I read it? Did I see what was going on? I sure did. And if there had been anything that I might have wanted to ask some questions about or look into, then I'd have gone there. But I don't need to make the story larger by what I do. In that particular instance, for sure. I just need to cover what the candidates say, give them a fair and equal, I love that phrase, fair and equal hearing, and let the voters decide on that one. But no, social media should not influence me. Now, there was one time social media did get to me, and God rest his soul, Brian Gallagher, who we lost just a little over a year ago. There was something that went out on social media that was, and I'll just say it was just horribly disrespectful and tactless, and yeah, I sort of got on my bandwagon about that a little bit, because that's just the type of stuff that shouldn't be there. I mean, there were pictures of the crash and descriptions, really horrible descriptions that just wasn't necessary. We know it's a horrible crash. We don't need descriptions of the fatalities.
Well, and I've heard, and I don't know of any of this that's happened to someone personally to me, but I've heard stories of families getting notifications of lost loved ones from social media, from Facebook and Twitter, before the authorities have a chance to notify them.
That how that would happen, I don't know, because they are very, and having tried to get those names, they are very closed and very adamant about making
Well,
sure
all it
all
takes
this
is a
clear.
passerby who knows what the car looks like, or something similar to that.
Well, then that's reckless behavior on people's, for those that are driving by. If I drove by and saw, oh, wow, that looks like Adam Lowe's car, and then I call your wife and tell her that, you're strung out on the highway, well, that's idiotic. That's foolish. That's stupidity at its highest. Now, if I actually saw you hanging over the rail, but would I call your wife? No, I would stop and see if I could help. I would hope. But, that's irresponsible. People, that's just everybody has their job when it's something like that happens, and that's you need to drive by, let everybody do their thing, and then you just need to hold tight. You'll know.
Keep your social media folks. Keep your social media posts in check.
Yeah, absolutely.
When you're doing things like that, use some
responsible.
responsibility. So here's the thing: maybe social media needs to be a licensed product. Perhaps like driving a car.
I would debate
only
that.
the responsible people.
I would debate being a journalist.
Now here's the headline that'll be in the
Should be
banner:
that.
Adam Lowe advocates reducing freedom of speech. Yada yada yada.
No.
I think that there's something to be said.
That is not the case. There is a responsibility for putting things out there. There should be.
Now, I will say on Facebook, and I'm like you, I have a Twitter account. I don't tweet very often because
one,
I
but
don't
I've never-
really engage in social media persistently throughout the day like a lot of folks. I engage in it incidentally, usually when I'm in a moment that's, a still moment. I'm in the waiting room waiting for the doctor. I'm going to check in on Facebook, see what everybody's up to.
Yeah.
So I don't engage consistently enough, I think, to enjoy the flow of Twitter. But on Facebook, there's this little hide button. And if you are a sensationalizing person and you're constantly putting things out there that aren't credible,
Yeah.
I tend to tell Facebook that I really don't want to see all of your posts.
You
Now,
don't
here's
see
the danger of that. I do want to see some of your posts. I like the pictures of the kids and
Oh yeah.
how your vacation went and how mom's doing and did you start a new business and you opened a new restaurant, how do I get there to eat? I want that kind of stuff. And I lose that stuff when you saturate it with uncredible things. Now, some people arguably could push that back on me because occasionally I'll post something that's not in my typical thread, that maybe is a bit controversial, but I try never to post anything that's not credible.
Yeah.
It may be challenging. It may even tick some people off. For instance, I don't go on there every week and bash how bad a coach Butch Jones is. I know that's going to elicit a very visceral response from the majority of my friends. So, I kind of think about how people might respond. Is it constructive? Is it not constructive? But at the same time, I use social media as an avenue to where people can kind of know what's on my mind, what I'm thinking about, what I care about. And I'm concerned that there's enough, I call them trolls, and I think that's the official term. There's enough trolls on social media that have caused folks to kind of pull back on putting things on there that would be more conversational. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, I have just gone through a major story that concerned Facebook and the sheriff, and I don't think there's any question that trolling was there, but yeah, when I did Facebook, and I literally went kicking and screaming to Facebook, but I found friends that I hadn't seen in years, and now we stay in contact. And I keep a close circle. It's only people that I care to know what I'm thinking, or and I'm doing it for fun more than anything, just to keep up with everybody. But I have tended to get upset once in a while and throw it out there and see what happens.
Well, Brian, I appreciate you giving us your candid thoughts on
I'm
the news in
gonna-
general, the media in general. I think when we man up on the idea, is the media biased? And I'll kind of end that segment with this. I remember, I think it was Pew Research that analyzed media output, and they kind of charted sources across a realm of whether or not they were sensationalized left-wing or right-wing. We think of media in terms of whether it's left-wing media or right-wing media. One of the most balanced sources towards the middle was NPR. And that's probably directly related to the fact that they don't engage in much political commentary on NPR.
Well, yeah.
It's a lot of, all things considered, and there's some special interest piece stuff on there. But if I found it interesting that NPR evidently was the fulcrum point. Would you agree with that assessment?
That surprises me.
Well, what would you say is the most credible news source? And the Cleveland Daily Banner is not appropriate.
Dadgummit. Oh man, the credible news source.
Now, knowing that you're a conservative, but from me honoring your professionalism with your with your career in journalism, what would you say is a credible, balanced news source?
I know there's a lot of people will disagree with this. I find watching. I can watch ABC, CBS, or NBC, and I think there's pretty good reporting on all three networks. I don't see the bias necessarily. It may be there, but that's also another good recommendation. Watch a little bit of everybody. Read a little bit of everybody. You'll know. I mean, it's not for me to be horribly judgmental here. But these people that watch Fox News all the time, and like I say, I'm not downgrading that. Watch somebody else a little bit. Get a little piece of every pie and see what's going on. You are not going to get the full story from any one source. It will not happen. Not in national journalism, anyway.
All right, we got a few minutes left. Brian Graves is with us, the illustrious reporter from the Cleveland Daily Banner. Brian, we're going to put you through our own little segment of 5 questions.
Oh, no.
And you've got to answer these in short answers.
All right, sure.
And these are actually right or wrong answers. If you get them wrong, you will be buzzed. So
it means I have to get on the air with Grissom again? Is that the
probably.
penalty?
Question number 1. Is Mark Grissom the greatest radio host to ever grace the microphone in Cleveland, Tennessee?
In Cleveland? Since Mark is not here, I'd better say that is false.
The correct answer is Mark Grissom is the greatest radio show host ever. Just ask him any day of the week.
Well,
and
yes.
he'll tell you. Just ask him any day of the week.
You didn't ask me what his opinion
He's
was.
also
Yes,
okay. So, second question: is Mark Grissom the best funeral director in Cleveland, Tennessee?
Sure. Why not?
Okay, that was correct. There we go.
Okay.
All right. Question number 3: why did Mark Grissom shut down Mark's Doghouse?
I have no idea. I honestly don't. I have no idea.
For those of you who don't know who Mark Grissom is, Mark Grissom hosted Mark in the Morning for ages. He's a personal friend of both Brian and I. So you don't know why he shut down Mark's Doghouse?
Honestly, I don't.
I don't either.
I don't talk to him that much anymore. I see his Facebook. He'll send me a little text, but I have no idea.
All right. Okay. We're moving on for the last 2 questions.
Okay.
Because we have 1 minute left. The best donuts are Krispy Kreme or Dunkin' Donuts?
Krispy Kreme.
That's correct. And last but not least, should I dye my hair blonde?
No.
It looks so good on you, Brian.
No.
No,
this is graying. This is
that
not blonde.
not graying.
That is graying.
That is blonde.
No, this is graying.
Flowing waves.
No, it's graying. This is graying.
Special thank you to Brian Graves of the Cleveland Daily Banner for being on Man Up America today. Special thank you to Talk 101.3 The Buzz for carrying us simulcasted on WTNB, guys. Also, thank you to Home Mortgage Solutions. Go call Daryl Whitaker at Home Mortgage Solutions. Gentlemen, go visit Bliss Day Spa. Buy your wife a gift certificate. Hey, or stick around yourself. Use their services. That's all we have for today. We'll see you tomorrow, and we're out.